Asian. Thank you for doing that, Jane. This presentation is on anti-Asian racism, past and present. And we have two great speakers here tonight. We have Catherine McCord from the Colorado Asian Pacific United, and we have Harry Siddhartha, sorry, from the Aurora Mental Health and Recovery Center. We'll start with Catherine. Catherine is from the Asian Pacific, Colorado Asian Pacific United. They have helped prepare a really good exhibit at the History Colorado Museum downtown in Denver. You might have wondered why Denver does not have a Chinatown. And Catherine could tell us the reason. The Colorado Asian Pacific United engages in community organizing, coalition building, and various advocacy-driven initiatives to uncover and celebrate local Asian and Native Hawaiian Pacific Island histories through research, oral story collection, placemaking, art, and curriculum development. As a progressive 501c3 nonprofit with a social justice commitment, the CAPU strives to advance racial diversity, equity, and inclusivity through community collaboration, celebration, and education. Harry received his Bachelor of Arts degree in political science from Colorado State University of Los Angeles and his Juris Doctor from University of Colorado Law School. Harry works with government officials and community partners to address health disparities in the refugee and immigrant communities. Due to his extensive experience in nonprofit and government relations, he's been quoted in various publications, including the Wall Street Journal and the Denver Post. He's received countless awards, including the Immigrant Liberty Award, the Martin Luther King Jr. Business Award, the ADA Access Award, the Young Hero Award, the Governor Ralph Carr Service Award, the Mayor's Diversity Award, and the Legal Aid Award. So we have really great speakers tonight. As you guys know, we've been concentrating on immigration in the last month or so. And I'd like to set the stage a little bit. First, I'd like to talk about a bill that's in the Colorado legislature right now. It's Senate Bill 25-047, and it would repeal many of the immigrant protections as far as local government, law enforcement interacting with federal authorities. I also want to mention that there were two resolutions in local governments this week about immigration. The Aurora City Council passed a resolution supporting immigrants, and the Douglas County Commissioners today passed a resolution in support of deporting illegal immigrants. The League of Women Voters of Arapahoe and Douglas County spoke at those meetings. We spoke in favor of the Aurora resolution and in opposition to the Douglas County resolution. Our next two meetings are January 21st, where we'll discuss mis- and disinformation on immigration and how it relates to policy, how it drives policy. And then on the 28th, we'll have a presentation on the DACA program. This first tonight, concentrating on Asian racism, I just want to set the stage that the United States has a history of anti-Asian immigrant legislation and public policy. There was a Chinese Exclusion Act and a Gary Act that from 1882 to 1943 basically excluded all Chinese immigration to the United States. And then, as we all know, at the beginning of World War II, the United States interned about 120,000 people of Japanese descent in basic concentration camps. And then I also want to mention that recently, during the COVID crisis, we know that there was a rise in anti-Asian hatred, especially Chinese hatred. So it's really important that we learn about anti-Asian racism and how it affects the everyday lives of both Asian people and other United States residents. So, Catherine, I'd like to turn the floor over to you. Thank you.
So much, Kathy, and thank you everyone for taking time out of your evening to be here and chat with us. I'm going to give a brief presentation about what we do at Colorado Asian Pacific United. And there are a couple people on this call that might know it a little bit better than me. So I invite you to chime in at any point if you feel called to. Is it okay if I share my screen? Okay.
That should be fine.
So, like Kathy mentioned, I work for an organization called Colorado Asian Pacific United. We like to begin with a land acknowledgement, and we know that land acknowledgements can feel a little performative at times, but we do feel it is important to recognize the land that we are speaking from. So, I am coming from and acknowledge that I am in the land now called Denver, Colorado, where the historic Chinatown was located, and are on the traditional territories and ancestral homelands of the Arapaho, Cheyenne, and Ute nations. We also acknowledge the 48 known tribal nations historically tied to the lands that make up the state of Colorado. And we recognize the land is stolen by use of unjust treaties, military force, and genocide. The resulting ethnocide and inequities are a continued violence against Indigenous peoples. As these words are spoken and heard, we intend to reaffirm the ties these nations have to their traditional homelands. We respect and thank the many diverse Indigenous peoples still connected to this land. We are committed to creating a relationship with Indigenous communities and understanding the long-standing history of where the land came from, how it has evolved, who made contributions, and who has benefited. We honor these nations and thank the Indigenous ancestors of this place. So what we do at CAPU is engage in community organizing, coalition building, and various, I'm so sorry. You move these things out of my way. And various advocacy-driven initiatives to uncover and celebrate local Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander histories through research, oral story collection, placemaking, art, and curriculum development. And our mission is that we strive to celebrate and preserve AA and HPI cultures and histories through education, allowing us to build stronger communities and allies while taking a step towards equitable empowerment, collaboration, and representation. So we have three main values. Education, we believe, is the key towards building understanding between communities and honoring our roots. Celebration of our identities encourages the exploration of different backgrounds and inspires preservation of varying histories. And collaboration within and outside of our communities strengthens alliances and creates a collective voice that cannot be ignored. And so we are a very small organization. We were founded officially in 2021 as a working board, and we've now transitioned to an advisory board. And we have 2 full-time staff. So our executive director is Joey Ha, and I was brought on last year as the operations manager. We like to share this quote: "Until the lion tells the story, the hunter will always be the hero." And we mention this because we like to talk a lot about history and about narratives and who is telling the story and who doesn't get to tell a story, or thinking about what stories we have heard and who was the one that was telling those. And so we ask that you think about whose narrative matters and who decides what is history, who decides how it gets recorded or how it's passed on, and what do we as a Western culture value when we think about history? Who do we assign weight to and truth to? Is there an objective history? And how do we perceive history and the passage of time? Because it differs culturally. And so in the West, we're taught we trust history museums, we trust textbooks, we trust academic scholars who write about history. And oftentimes, Western society views history as this is what happened and there is no other truth to it, right? It's set in stone, it is a remnant of the past. But a lot of cultures, a lot of Eastern cultures pass on history through oral traditions. So that doesn't always account for or contain histories from other perspectives. It doesn't give space to validity and the trust that we give to Western societies. So often these narratives are suppressed. If we think that history institutions are microcosms and tools of colonialism and imperialism, the narratives that do not support that are inevitably suppressed or they're disappeared entirely. So understandings of history are decided by those in power and are extractive in nature, right? It's what story can I pull out of this? Oral histories and other ways of knowing are lost or they're seen as less than. um, so it's often relegated to the past, though in other cultures, history is just as present today and it directly affects and informs our future. So a big part of what started Kapu, like how Kapu originated, is that there was this narrative around reclaiming Denver's historic Chinatown. And I'm curious, does anyone here know, like you could raise your hand. Do you know that there was a Chinatown in Denver? I see, well, a couple hands, right? So Denver actually used to have the largest Chinatown in the interior West. Um, and if you were to walk around Denver a few years ago, you would see no remnants of that, right? So in the late 1800s, Denver had a thriving Chinatown, and it was mostly on Wazi from 14th to 17th. And depending on the year, it would grow or move a little bit in each direction. And it was an ethnic enclave for Chinese migrants that came to Denver after the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad. But after the anti-Chinese race riot of 1880 and the racist federal legislation that Kathy mentioned and the xenophobic society, Chinatown disappeared and there was no clear evidence that it existed today. Um, so in 2022, after about 2 years of really rallying behind acknowledging that, um, there was this plaque that I don't know if people remember this. It was right outside of Coors Field. It was at best inaccurate, at worst offensive. So this plaque talked a lot of, it talked about that there was Chinese migrants in Denver. What it didn't mention was the name of the person that was lynched. His name was Look Young at an anti-Chinese race riot. The plaque, in fact, called it a Chinese race riot, and which suggested that it was caused because of Chinese people inciting the violence. But really, it was incited by white Denverites. So Colorado Asian Pacific United was able to get this plaque removed. And in addition to that, received an apology from the mayor, which is only one of the fifth in the nation to receive an apology and the first outside of California. This was such a big deal and such a big story, and we couldn't have done this without the help of Linda Long on this call and Heather Clifton, and the Chin families who were able to share their personal experiences with being direct descendants of this Denver's Chinatown. So Colorado Asian Pacific United collaborated with I Am Denver, the Office of Storytelling, to create about an hour-long documentary called Reclaiming Denver's Chinatown. And in it, the Lung and Chin families really share their experiences, their families' experiences, family photographs, just really brought this story to life and to share about what really happened and what their experiences are like. And the Long families, you can see in this photo, were received an official apology letter and a medal from the mayor's office. The Long families are also extremely integral into this exhibit that we have at History Colorado called Where is Denver's Chinatown? You can visit this. It's on view now and through August 2025, but it has personal photographs, like chairs from people's homes, personal items that are from the period in Denver, like from the Chinatown in Denver. There's a little living room with an altar set up, and it really provides a lot of education about the historic Chinatown. And it also is in partnership with um, University of Colorado's architecture program, where students are reimagining what it would look like to reclaim this space. And we have also placed historic markers and murals in an attempt to reclaim the Chinatown. So this was really community driven and community informed about what historically and accurately happened in the Chinatown. So there are ways that you can visit that and see that there is a callback to who this belonged to and what really took place there. Um, there are 3 historic markers, and there are 2 murals currently installed downtown. And so this one mural that you're looking at now is called Be Not Afraid of Going Slow, but Not Going at All. And this is by Niley Lore, and it's about the past, present, and future of Denver's Chinatown. And we were able to host a block party and celebrate that, this is up, there's um, something that feels like we're starting to reclaim these spaces. This mural is by Corey Fetter, and it's on the Auraria campus, and it's called Woven in the Wind. And so it's dedicated to the Chinese diaspora and other migration stories. And I believe this artist is Hmong American. And so right now, we are working on um, getting a state historical fund to do a survey plan of historically recognized buildings in what was Denver's Chinatown. And so this could look like identifying the buildings and maybe getting a historical landmark designation. We have our installations in the Sugar Block alleyway, which was the heart of the historic Chinatown. We just hired an artist to design artwork that they collaborated with Asian Girls Ignite to kind of reclaim the space with iconography that reflects the historical events of the time and bring like art and vibrancy to those pieces. And then we also have an exhibit at Denver International Airport called Denver is My Home. And that is in partnership with Japanese Arts Network and Little Saigon. And so again, the Lung family has generously contributed so many personal items to really share how Denver is our home and how from World War II, from Chinese American soldiers to the historic timeline of what happened to what it looks like, what are traditional Chinese items that people use and how are they used. It's a really beautiful installation. If you have a chance to travel and you'll be at the airport in the sea mezzanine, I recommend taking a look at that. I will skip past these in the interest of time. Um, but things that we like to ask people to consider, how do we ensure the community has ownership of the stories that we share? We don't want to be prescriptive in saying this is what it was like. We want to hear from who was there. We want to know what it was really like and hear that perspective. How can we push existing institutions to include suppressed narratives? How do we challenge that status of who's the storyteller? And then how do we create our own spaces for unfiltered community-led stories? And maybe not for this group, but what role do funders play, right? Because we do need finances to fund our projects. But I know we got started a little bit late, so I want to wrap up and make sure Harry has time for his presentation. But thank you all. If you have any questions, I'm happy to talk through it. Or if Linda or Heather, you want to jump in.
Yes, if anybody has any questions, could they put in the chat, please? And we'll go, could you just talk a little bit about what caused the anti-Chinese riot in the 1800s?
So it, from the historical context, it was like there were people that were xenophobic and racist, and they started attacking the Chinese folks. Um, and there is that documentary I mentioned. It is free to watch. That goes into more details about, what that looked like. But basically, um, it just started as a bar brawl that was racially motivated,
And the result was the
burning
entire,
down millions of dollars worth of infrastructure and just decimating the Chinatown.
right. So we can see how xenophobia really does affect people's lives and has long-lasting historical ramifications.
Mhm.
So, and then I think I do have a question in the chat. Um, except I looked at the wrong thing.
Are you working with Sakura Square?
Yeah.
Does that
We
make sense?
don't work directly with Soccer Square, but we do partner with Stacy and the foundation.
Okay, that was just a question in the chat.
Yes, and thank you for bringing these stories to light. You're exactly right. History depends entirely on the storyteller, and we have to you have to get different stories around from different viewpoints to be able to really um, take into account all the different things that are happening and which things you're going to support and what is really true and what you've decided to honor in your life. Harry, you're a great fit. You work with people having encountered hate crimes and race and disparities in healthcare. So why don't we hear from you? And Kat, thank you very much. That was a great presentation. And I will put the documentary on our website and also send it out to everybody on the call.
Oh,
So,
great. Thank you.
oh, and there's another question. Hold on.
Are there plans to celebrate Chinese New Year?
Yeah, Chinese New Year plans.
So the Far East Center, which has anyone been to the Far East Center and maybe thought it was Chinatown? There's a big archway that is pretty like iconic. So that's the Party Center. It really celebrates the Little Saigon district. But they put on a 2-day Lunar New Year celebration. This year it will be Saturday and Sunday, February 1st and 2nd. Colorado Asian Pacific United will be there tabling. So you can see, we'll show you like the historic, oh, it's blurry, but there's like this historic timeline. We have a traveling exhibit or an exhibit that you'll be able to view. Um, but yes, it is a beautiful celebration. There will be lion dancing, there will be performances. Um, it'll be really fun. So if you can make it, I think it's 11 to 5 on both Saturday and Sunday.
So you had a question? How do you experience racism today?
How do I personally?
Um, are you Asian? I can't tell. So how do Asian people today in Denver experience racism?
So my mom is from Taiwan. So my father's Caucasian, so I'm half Asian. I was raised primarily by my mom. My father passed away when I was very young. Um, I experience it. I experience microaggressions. It could be as small as that someone asking, "Where are you from?" But when I say, I was born in Maine, grew up in Florida, they might ask, "Where are you really from?"
Yeah.
Or are are you even Asian? Or how Asian are you? Right? Like how like I have to prove how Asian I am. A lot of times I'm made to feel like I, need people to know I'm Asian because of where I work. Um, I have a lot of fear too. I fear a lot from my mom. She is darker skinned and she is an older woman who, if she wears a mask, she is doing it for people's safety, but people could say that it's because she brought COVID, right?
Yeah.
Her next door neighbor was arrested for attending the Capitol riot and went to federal prison. So I have a lot of fear for her safety. The way I witness people speaking to her, the way I see her interacting with people to be palatable to white people is really hard. It was really hard as a child to see that. Um, so yeah, I know a lot of I don't want to speak for anyone else, but there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of fear for safety, for personal safety, especially around COVID. It was, people were afraid to be in public. People were afraid to do things like grocery shop. Um, so it's just a lot of, not being seen as an equal or human.
Right. Thank you
And
very
I
much
would add
for
to
sharing that.
what, yeah, I would add to what Kat just shared is that there are instances of assault and crimes committed against the Asian community in Colorado. I mean, just about a week before Christmas in Grand Junction, there was a Pacific Islander reporter that was followed by a person, and then the person, yelled at him saying, "This is Trump country. You need to go back to where you came from," and then proceed to actually get out of the car and physically assaulted the reporter.
Right.
So that person was arrested and charged with hate crime. There was another instance of assault in Lakewood of an Asian man at an RTD station being approached by two people, and then two people started yelling slur and assaulting him. And I mean, I've been called slur myself, multiple times. And anytime there is a news account of hate crimes, and any one of us speaks out about hate crime, there's a good chance that we would receive emails from people telling us to go back to where we came from. Why are you here? Stop eating dogs. We get those emails all the time. It's to the point where I mean, I'm numb to it.
And I have immense privilege in being white passing, right? Like somebody said here, are you even Asian? Like you don't look Asian, right? So that is no, it's a total privilege, right? It's a privilege that I learned at a very young age to lean into because that kept me safer. It kept me out of trouble. I'm not proud that I leaned into it, right? I'm kind of reclaiming that identity now, but it's been a lot of work to do that, to step into it and find it powerful. Um, it it I learned it was a privilege, and I have to use that privilege, right? I have to put that in action, and I can be in spaces more safely than others sometimes, right?
Yeah, exactly. Do you think that the hate is sort of static throughout your life, or has it increased, or how do you feel about that? Um
There has been a long history of hate crimes against the Asian community, right? I mean, Kat talks about the
right,
destruction of Chinatown.
right,
But over the years, when politicians or leaders deem it convenient to use hate as an excuse to rise to power or to generate votes, that's when we see the communities get impacted, right? So the riot in Chinatown, Chinese migrants brought in for cheap labor, and then politicians turn around and says these migrants are invading the country, bringing disease, crime, and that contributes to like the violence and lynching and destruction.
right,
Exact same rhetoric we saw during COVID, during after 9/11, and I expect to see this now as we are seeing a ramp up of trade war against China. I mean, anytime our leaders openly disparage a community, whether it's Asian, Hispanic, Latino, Black community, LGBT, that's when we see the spike. So it is a persistent thing simply because people in power often like to use hate to just
right.
rise to power.
And then and I imagine this is true, but I really don't know, so I'm asking, say someone says, well, like with COVID, they said it was Chinese virus. Does that hatred expand all through the Asian and Native Hawaiian and Pacific Island community? Or do people just focus on Chinese then?
It extends to anybody that looks Asian.
So
Generally
anybody that
speaking,
looks different.
yes, bigots do not usually take the time to differentiate if you are Chinese or Japanese or Korean or Nepali or Hawaiian. They don't care, right? It looks Asian or look other, therefore you are the foreigner, therefore you are the invader, and you are the
Does it extend just from the word immigrant? Or is it more specific? Do you know what I'm saying?
You mean like using the word immigrant?
Yeah. Does that increase
I think that
again?
it will depend on the context, right? I mean, if you use the word immigrant in a positive tone, positive context, that's not going to that's not going to rise in hate crime. But if you use immigrant and you equate it with criminals, like a lot of the conversations we've been seeing, especially with Venezuelan migrants, then yes, absolutely, that will increase. So it's the context of how you use it.
Mhm. So I didn't mean to interrupt. If you have something you'd like to present, or we could just continue the discussion.
I will do a quick presentation and then I'm happy to engage in discussion. Okay. All right. Can you all see my presentation?
Says you started screen sharing. Now I can.
Yes. Great. Okay. All right. So let's start the slideshow. All right. All right. So in my presentation, I use the term AA and HPI. And some of you may be wondering, what does that acronym mean? AA and HPI stands for Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islanders. These are, different categories within our community. General demographics of the AA and HPI community in Colorado. About 4% of the people in Colorado identify as Asian, whether this is singular or whether they check multiple boxes. Around 22,000 people in Colorado identify as Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander. If you see the breakdown, not surprisingly, the vast majority are in the Denver metro area. So you see like the darker shades are indicating higher percentage. We see a lot of our community in Adams, Arapahoe, Denver, Boulder, Douglas, and Jefferson. So the Denver metro area. This is the top 5 AA and HPI community in Colorado. This is pretty consistent when you compare it to the national data. So nationwide throughout the US, if you ask me what are the top 5 community in the US, I would say the same thing: Chinese, Filipino, Indian, Korean, and Vietnamese. And before I forget, I will be sharing this PowerPoint with everybody. So you do not need to take notes or do screenshot. There's also links in this PowerPoint about different events, upcoming events, and sources, so you can always use them. What are the top issues facing the community? This is based on the poll conducted by Colorado Health Foundation. Unfortunately, the Health Foundation was not able to disaggregate the result by ethnicity, so we're kind of relying on the overall data. Not surprisingly, you can see cost of living, housing affordability, government politics are the top 3 when they survey people throughout Colorado, not just specific to Asian. This is actually a good illustration of some of the issues facing our community, because our community is so small. Oftentimes, it's hard to find data that is specific for the AA and HPI community. We often have to settle for data that are lumped with other groups. And why is that an issue? That's an issue because if you look at the screen and you see the top bar, this is a chart showing the percentage of people earning incomes below 200% of the federal poverty level. If you just look at the top 2 bar, Colorado and Asian, These are usually the data all that we have because we're often lumped with everybody else. So you would see, oh, Asian, 21%. We're actually doing better than the Colorado average. The community must be doing well. But then when you take the time and the expense to actually collect all of this very specific disaggregated data, you see the wide differences in the community, right? You see Burmese community have 52% living below 200% of the poverty level. And then you see, Filipino at 18.5, 18%, or Indian at 12.5%. A lot of these differences can be traced back to immigration, right? A lot of the Burmese community members are recent refugees. They just started arriving in the US, probably, I would say, around 2010-ish when they started coming. So they haven't had much time to build that generational wealth. Compare, if we go down the list, you see Chinese at 22%. The Chinese community has been here for a while. They have had time to build some capital wealth, some of that generational wealth. Okay, challenges facing our community. Rising hate crimes, we have discussed that about, I do worry that as, we have an incoming presidential administration, we have leaders that are not hesitant to use hate as one of their tools, that we will see a rise in hate crimes against our community again. In Colorado, it's been in the news recently, but there's actually a sophisticated burglary ring that has been specifically targeting Asian-owned businesses. This is an issue that has been on the minds of a lot of different community members and small business owners. And this is one that, as far as I know, I believe law enforcement has not been able to solve this burglary ring yet. Lack of representation within the government. Did you know that within the state legislature, there is 0 Asian American, Native Hawaiian, or Pacific Islander state representative or state senator? There's literally no representation right now. And then some of the immigration challenges that we expect we will see again is the return of the public charge rule, potential changes to birthright citizenship, and then Project Aurora. So let me go through that one step at a time. The public charge rule is a rule that has been around for a while. It's a rule that basically says that even if you are in this country legally, when you apply to become U.S. citizen, the federal government can deny your application if they determine that you are likely to be a public charge, meaning somebody that is going to be in poverty and dependent on government benefits. This rule hasn't really been used a lot in immigration, but the Trump administration, the first one and the incoming second one, have been using public charge quite a bit. And that has resulted in a sharp decrease in the number of immigrants and refugees applying for government benefits and seeking healthcare access, because they're worried that if they use Medicaid or food stamp or any of the government benefits, that it would put them on the radar, and then their application to become U.S. citizen would be. Birthright citizenship, there has been open comment by various representatives and officials stating that there needs to be a change to revoke birthright citizenship, so that way people that are born in the people that are naturalized to become a U.S. citizen may be able to get their citizenship revoked. That is definitely a concern among our community. I am not, I'm a naturalized citizen, so I was not born in the U.S. I became a citizen through the immigration process. Depending on what the change Trump administration is proposing, I might lose my citizenship. I hope that's not the case, but at this point, that's one of the fear in the community. And then Project Aurora is the statement by President Trump of how he plans on creating the largest mass deportation and starting in the city of Aurora and naming it Project Aurora. So that has caused a lot of fear in the community. How do you support the community? One of you earlier asked about Lunar New Year event. So this is actually a great timing for this webinar because you can attend any of the Lunar New Year that I hyperlink in that presentations and get to know some of the leaders and the community organizations present. You know, KAPU will be there. I'm sure other organizations like Asian Chamber, Asian Girls Ignite, just to name a few, will be there. And that's a great way to get to know the leaders and the small businesses, get to know us. Speak out against anti-Asian hate crimes if you see it. One of the challenges we face is that people are still hesitant to report hate crime. They still feel that, you know, nothing will be done, that why do I want to draw more attention to myself? You know, I'm okay, I'm fine, I don't need the police to be involved. So we always try to encourage our community to not be afraid to report hate crimes, because if we don't know about it, we cannot take action. And then support the local refugee resettlement agencies. I fully anticipate that the number of refugees admitted into the US will drop like a rock. It will be reduced to barely anything. As a result, a lot of these refugee agencies, all 4 of them
I
are
could probably
located in the
Google
Denver
it
metro
and
area,
see as well.
will
Here.
lose funding.
Did you hear if I
And-
said my name? Question mark.
Jennifer, I'm hearing some noise coming from you right now.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So these 4 organizations, I expect they will lose a lot of funding and staff, but the needs in the community is still there. So if you could consider donating, contributing your time or expertise to this organization, that would be great, because that will help a lot of the refugee communities that they serve in Colorado. And these are the sources that I mentioned. You can click on any of those links. The Colorado Office of New Americans, they oversee a lot of the statewide programs involving immigrants and refugees. We work very closely with them. Colorado Lotus Project is actually the first project of its kind in Colorado that took all of the data that we have in Colorado and tried to disaggregate them, try to break them down into different ethnicities. So that way we have a much better and clearer understanding of the challenges facing our community. And Colorado Pulse Poll is the annual poll that the Health Foundation does to survey residents in Colorado about what are their challenges, their concerns, their hope for the future. So that's my presentation in a very, very fast format.
Thank you very much, Harry. That's really good information, and I'll see that that gets on the website and gets passed out to everyone. I have a question about how about the fact that people are afraid to report hate crimes. And so that generates a fear in the community, but there's no way for that to get better if they're not reported, and people like US born citizens oppose them and speak out against them. So what would you say? Do most people report, or are most people scared?
When we survey different ethnicities, so not just Asian, but also LGBTQ and our Black community members, hate crimes is always underreported. I mean, I think a lot of people are afraid. Some of them are afraid of law enforcement, you know, which is understandable, especially if we see a push of combining law enforcement with immigration officials. Then immigrants and refugees are a lot less likely to report anything because they don't want to have any kind of encounter with immigrations and custom enforcement.
And so let's just take Operation Aurora. We had a recent raid by the Aurora Police Department where ICE was involved. And so that in all immigrant communities is going to affect how people decide whether to report a crime. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yep. I think that raid will result in a lot of immigrants absolutely refusing to work with police and absolutely refusing to report anything.
And are you seeing that in your community, that that has been a factor in people's thought process?
Yes, we have heard from a lot of people that are not U.S. citizens that, yeah, they do not want the police to be involved. They don't want immigration to know. Sometimes they report it to us, but that's it. And then they ask us not to get the police involved or immigration involved.
And so I think, that's a great example because they were the people that were victimized in that crime didn't report it because they were afraid, and then they did report it, and now everyone's afraid, or
Mhm.
even more afraid. Um,
Mhm.
so do you see a solution out there, or how do you encourage people to report it, knowing that the possibilities for further victimization are so great?
It's a tricky balance. I mean, this is one of those things where it takes a while to build trust between law enforcement and the community, but it can certainly easily be destroyed if law enforcement decides to do something like cooperating with ICE and having ICE be involved when they make an arrest, right? I mean, because no matter what kind of positive things I can say about how this is the police, this is not immigration, they're not going to get immigration involved. The only thing the community will hear is that, well, yeah, but last week they just had a whole ICE agents come with them and they made the arrest. How would I know that I'm not going to be next on that?
Right. And so that's why the new bill in the legislature is really important. Can you say a little more about that?
I only know a little bit about that bill. My understanding is that that bill is an attempt by the Republican officials to roll back a lot of that protection that the legislature has put to protect immigrants community from that law enforcement ICE action. And I think that's an attempt by the officials to say that we need to roll this back because of crime wave, because immigrants are coming in. I do believe it is important for community groups to get involved and advocate against it. I am hopeful that given the fact that we have a democratically controlled legislature and governor, that bill will die a quick death.
And I just want to mention that while there are, good protections for immigrants with respect to local law enforcement, working in conjunction with ICE, it's a patchwork across Colorado. And there are some jurisdictions that very much want to work with ICE. And I know Douglas County and 5 other counties got together and filed a suit to try to overturn that law as unconstitutional. It was dismissed, but they have indicated their intention to file that suit in federal court. And today in the Douglas County Commission, the resolution resolves to use county resources to assist in the deportation of illegal immigrants. Which counties? I'll have to get back to you on that. I'll put that in the website and I'll send that to you. I don't know right off the top of my head, I would hate to say. Do you know which counties were in that suit, Harry?
I do not. I mean,
Yeah, I'll get back.
I'm
I'll
sure
get that.
Douglas is one of them.
Yeah, I'll get that back to you guys. Sorry about that.
Today's resolution included Douglas County and Castle Pines.
Castle, yeah.
Mm.
So we're nearing the end. Does anyone else have a question? Hold on, I'm looking at the wrong thing. Jennifer, are there any other questions? How did you find out?
I am pulling up the news article that talks about the joint action between the Aurora Police and ICE. So once I find it, I'll put it in the link.
And I'll send out the news article about the Aurora raid with ICE. There is a question. One of your first slides indicated water was an issue along with housing and homelessness. Could you talk a little more about that?
This is me kind of guessing because I did not design that survey for the Health Foundation. But my guess would be that water issue in terms of, the fact that Colorado is constantly growing and there's not enough water for everybody, right? To sustain our growth, to support the farmland. There are numerous news articles about how a lot of the farmlands already had to cut water and how the federal government is trying to broker that agreement between the multiple states about water use. I think where the survey questions about the water is indicative of that, of just like, how do we manage water in our state, given that it is a limited resource.
So, wait, water is getting more and more expensive for homeowners, so it could be that.
Could be that
Um,
too, yeah.
If we see a hate crime in action, what specific action should we take?
The first action should always be to support the victim, to see what kind of help that they need. I mean, we want to intervene to stop it, but it is a bit of a tricky balance, right? Because you also don't want to escalate the situation and makes it become more combative, more violent. So assuming that the perpetrator is no longer there, the first action is always to, support the victim, see what kind of help that they need. Do they want us to call the police, to get the police involved, or do they just want, somebody to accompany them back to their home or to their, workplace just to help support them? And then if they are comfortable with the police, then yes, by all means, get the police involved, file the report.
Thank you. What? What if they're there?
If they are there, then there are actually trainings that different community groups have put on. It's called the 4D of bystanders. It talks about kind of like de-escalation technique, how to maintain that distance and how to de-escalate the conflict. Let me see if I can find a link for that, and I'll share it along with my slides. A link on how
Thank you
can
very
you
much.
take the de-escalation training.
Thank you. And as we end tonight, I just want to apologize for everybody with the mix-up with the Zoom link. I know that delayed us a little bit, and we had great speakers. And Catherine, thank you for telling us about Chinatown and how xenophobia and racism really impact people and impact the way we view our city today. And thank you for bringing this story out. And Harry, thank you so much for your information on hate crimes. We all stand against hate crimes, and it's good to educate ourselves about how prevalent they are and what we can do to stop them. Thank you for your information about how we can help support Asian American and Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander citizens. And I also want to apologize to Catherine. I didn't mean I couldn't tell you were Asian. You're on Zoom and the question seemed to depend on you being Asian. So I appreciate everybody, and I appreciate the Long family for all their contributions to the History Colorado exhibit, and we'll all watch the documentary. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you,
And
everyone.
Thank you
there
all.
are a lot of thank yous in the chat. So I'll keep the video going for a while if you'd like to read them and see for yourself how absolutely thrilled we are you've been here. So thank you very much for sharing.
Thank you all for being here.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I
You know, Catherine, we'll have this on the JEDI website too. So a lot of those people that didn't get in, we
Yeah.
can send them a note that it's